Yo, what's going on, everyone? It's Brian and Jim here, and kind of sad.
We basically spent half the year doing this.
Yes, it took us significantly longer than we expected.
We took all year doing this.
Half a year, Jim.
Until now.
Yeah.
All year up until this point.
We're at the end of our Resident Evil reviews, and we're ending it with, one could say, one hell of a bang.
Bri, when are we doing the spin-offs? You know we're going to get that question.
We will get to them in the future.
You have... What, you're not sick of it already? You have Survivor. I have Operation Raccoon City. I mean, we have the games.
I have the Outbreaks. We could do them all.
There we go.
No, Jim. We're giving our focus to this beautiful game, Resident Evil 2 Remake. Now, anyone who's followed the channel, when this came out in January, I played it, I streamed it, I put up one of my playthroughs, like way back then, and needless to say, I probably talked enough about how much I love this game, so now we're going to go a little bit more in depth. Finally got this cheap fuck to get it and play it.
Someone was right about a price drop.
Someone was right that he'd never finish it. But you finished Flower.
I finished Hotel Mario.
All right, let's just get into it.
Aha. Released in 2019, this came out on the PlayStation 4, the Xbox One, and Windows. It was developed by Capcom R&D 1 and published by Capcom. This is the game that, much like 1, has had a ton of hype since it's come out, but doesn't deserve it. Let's find out.
Oh, it deserves it.
Bri,
Oh,
God
shit.
damn it. Now they don't need to watch.
I'm sorry.
Great.
Live in suspense. We don't know.
Forget that happened.
Haha.
The graphics. Wow. Holy crap. This is one of not only the best looking games in the series by far, but of this generation. Even when you first start, like, the hamburger looks like a goddamn hamburger. The graphics are just insane. And then once you get into the actual gameplay, like, the lighting, the effects, the transformations, just the little details here and there, like the weather effects, just everything. The amount of detail that they put into this is just insane. I really have trouble finding faults outside of the obvious uncanny valley where it still looks like a video game at the end of the day with the character models. This is as close to movie quality with people that you're really ever going to get. So, I mean, without any kind of stupid nitpicking, we had to give it 10s. And you don't need any beer. It's basically perfect as is. The sound. Again, what a package. So, let's start off with the voice acting. And it's excellent. All the characters, Leon and Claire, the main stars, of course, they're fantastic. All the secondary characters, there's actual effort put into their performances. There's no complaints there. Where the game really nails it, though, is in the sound effects. And we had this problem with a lot of the other entries where it seems like they got lazy, where the guns didn't sound, booming enough, where the sound effects just sounded a little weak, or they all sounded too samey. Not the case here. Bullets. When you're firing away, you're going to miss zombies a lot, so you're going to hear them ricocheting off the walls. And if you're wearing headphones, you're going to hear the echo of the ricochets. When you hit body parts on any of the creatures, it almost always sounds different depending on the creature and depending on the body part that you hit. When it comes to just the general sound effects, like, it's big, it's booming, it's over the top. It's the Michael Bay kind of explosions that you get from 5 and 6, but put in a way that's actually believable, if that's the right word. And if there is a soft spot I could say that they did, it's with the music, because for the most part, it's not even music in the background. It's more focused on the ambient sounds, which makes it a more tense experience. But the music you do get is very well crafted, and they decided to throw in that beautiful little Easter egg of being able to use the original Resident Evil 2 soundtrack, which is such a good thing to put in there. So if you want to trip down nostalgia lane with a completely memorable all-time soundtrack, turn that on. And one more thing I want to put in is, again, back to the sound effects. The ambient sound effects, just, you hear creatures in other rooms. You hear their sound effects. You can tell that a licker's behind the door and you go, oh no, I don't want to deal with this. And then when Mr. Goddamn X shows up, you hear that big bastard stomping around 4 or 5 rooms away. So you know, oh crap, he's somewhere around here. Which is the right door to go in, which is the right way to go. So it just brings it all together to just make it such a tense experience during your whole playthrough. The sound design is top-notch, and thanks to throwing in the classic soundtrack, there is absolutely no complaints here, and it's another easy 10. We both gave it 10s, you don't need any more beer. Holy crap, what a whole package as far as presentation goes.
The controls. If you're familiar with any third-person shooter game, then you're going to be pretty familiar with what you need to do. It's a very simplistic control scheme. They don't overcomplicate it like some of the other titles we've recently reviewed. And basically, you have your aim, your shoot, you have a secondary weapon that you have to use the bumpers for to aim and shoot, and then you have your inventory, which, like every Resident Evil, it's just one button away, and then you can go in there, use other items as needed. You also have the quick turnaround, a map button, so it's meant to go back to that nostalgic feel of you don't have a ton of buttons to do a ton of actions, but it flows really well. The movement itself never feels that clunky, although you do have areas where you move a little slower or you're moving past things, so it's meant to reflect the environment that you're working. Your aiming is on point, but you do have a bit of a sway now, and a lot of your enemies move, so you're going to have to be a little more precise. If you don't feel like dealing with that, you can always turn on the auto aim, going back to that original tank style, but let's face it, if you're going to put on the auto aim, what fun is this game anyway? Our only true knock with this game's controls, I wish they would have used what Resident Evil 6 did with that one button healing solution, because there's enough buttons there, and although it did make the control scheme a little more complicated, it was a lot more convenient. However, this game, since it is going back to that survival horror series, you're going to be more strategic, and you need to go in your menu to use any of your healing items. I'm not saying it was a detriment at all to the gameplay, I'm just saying it would have made the control a tiny bit easier. So, when it comes to scores, we both gave it 8s. This is well above average and still one of the best controlling Resident Evil games. So when it comes to beer, I'll just add 1 for me being a little nitpicky about such an amazing title. The gameplay. Let's get this out of the way right at the beginning. This did almost exactly what the original Resident Evil 2 did. The plot and the basic gameplay mechanics, even the 2 different scenarios you play through. It's all things we've seen before. However, this game managed to add so much more. The plot, I would say, dives a bit deeper into a lot of the characters, especially Ada and Sherry's storylines. But on top of that, the police station has never felt bigger. The rooms are all much larger, and unlike the original Resident Evil 2, which was strictly about just surviving the enemies, this game actually felt a little bit more like an exploration game. I'm not saying they added a lot more puzzles or that the puzzles they did add were that complicated. I'm just saying you had a reason to explore almost every room because you were either looking for main objectives or items that you had to use later, or there were nice Easter eggs to other Resident Evil games and the original. So I loved that aspect about it.
Right!
Yes?
What the?
You should have looked around more and gotten more boards for the windows.
Jim, I got almost all the boards. It's just I had to determine where I wanted to put them because this game is so strategic.
Strategy.
That's right. That is the crux of why I love this game so much, is the strategy. Because let me just be honest, this game makes you feel so underpowered against your enemies. At this point in Resident Evil series, you think, zombies, I can deal with them, they're easy. And then you run into these goddamn bullet sponges that they are. Not to mention, they're swaying back and forth. So when you're lining up that perfect headshot and you miss, it really pisses you off. And also makes you shit your pants a little bit. Because when those zombies attack you, number one, it is gruesome. But the amount of damage they do now, it's no longer like, oh, I can deal with getting bit. No. You need to get away and get away fast. So when you see a room full of them, it's not like any previous Resident Evil where you're like, I'll just stand my ground and deal with them. No. You need to conserve ammo. You need to use those secondary weapons smartly because on one hand, sure, you could throw a flashbang or use your knife, but they go away. And if you don't have them on hand when you're being attacked to evade them really fast, you're going to take that damage. and health and all your other items are so limited, especially if you're playing on normal, and don't even get me started about the hardcore mode. On top of the zombies now being much more terrifying, let's talk about the goddamn lickers. I thought I knew what a crazy enemy they were to begin with in the past, like them and hunters, and then you see them in this game, and you realize how goddamn lightning fast they are. And they take a lot of damage. Sure, they have an immense weakness to sound, so if you get a flashbang, you can actually mess them up a little bit. But dear God, are they so much more terrifying where if you hear them in another room, as Jim mentioned, you're probably going to go a real crazy roundabout way to avoid them. There is a nice little workaround since they only detect you by sound. You can walk really slow, but then a zombie will come get you, and you make noise, and you're decapitated. So there's that. And of course, the star of the whole game, Mr. X.
He really is the game changer for this game.
It's amazing because anyone who played the original knows Mr. X only showed up in Scenario B. But then you're playing this game, and what the hell is moving that helicopter out of your way? Holy shit, it's Mr. X. You might think, okay, I've probably collected enough weapons, I can deal with them. You shoot at his body and realize, oh shit, he's bulletproof on his body. You only need to hit his head. And you just keep going through this mental gymnastics of, I can get away from him. I can just run into another room or the main hall. No one goes in the main hall, and his big ass is lumbering towards you. The only place you're safe is a save room and some select few areas. Otherwise, you're going to hear him stomping, and it's going to make the game so much more intense because it's not like other enemies stop either. So, with all these changes to the gameplay, it's what we were familiar with, but now it's amplified, and it does feel like a brand new experience, which is one of the reasons why Jim and I loved it so goddamn much. As I mentioned, the stories are different, and I don't want to offer any spoilers. I will just say there is a moment where this game really tugs at your heartstrings, and it comes from a very unexpected side character. I'll just leave it at that. So the last thing I'll say about the gameplay is just, I am one of these people that really appreciate this is not a 20-some hour game. You can beat it in about 8 hours or 5 hours. It depends how fast you move. But it's really up to you how much you want to explore and enjoy yourself with this game. So there's a lot offered here.
Right!
Yes.
You forgot the part where they'll just randomly drop you into a boss fight with no warning.
Oh, God. Yeah. Once again, they leave enough in the game that feels familiar, but then they throw things like that, so you never know what's really around the corner. And there's some other enemies that you'll run into that are... They're different takes on the original games. So either way, Jim and I, we gave this 10s. We absolutely love the original, but this just took it to a new level, much like Resident Evil 1's remake. And when it comes to beers, I'm going to offer up 2 celebratory beers, because this game will have you on the edge of your seat, but you'll have so much fun trying to survive this crazy-ass night.
Alright, so can't all be great, so let's get to the originality. The biggest problem with this game is, unlike the remake of 1, it doesn't feel like that drastic of a change from the original experience that you would have had with Resident Evil 2. The biggest changes Brian already went through, so to me the biggest changes besides, the story additions that they put in there, the extra rooms, all the kind of crap you would consider, I would just put down as the real focus on the cat and mouse game that is Mr. X. So with that being said, not that much different. So we decided to give it 2s. What can I say? And when it comes to beer, I'm just going to add 1 beer, because thank God for Mr. X.
Replayability. Just like a lot of the previous Resident Evil titles, this game offers you a whole lot of unlockables in different modes, and it's all dependent on how fast you beat the game, what difficulty, and what your final ranking is. So right off the bat, I'm not going to go through them all, but you can unlock different handguns, submachine guns, rocket launchers, miniguns, all the standard stuff if you beat the game on a harder difficulty and enough time, and depending on your character. So there's multiple reasons to play through this game and try and get that better ranking. On top of that, I've previously mentioned this game has so many little Easter eggs that if you want to walk around and explore the police station or other areas, you will find enjoyment doing that. And probably your first playthrough, you're just going to try to survive as best you can. However, if you do manage to beat the game, you will go through that second run as the other character. So right there, you're going to play through the game at a minimum 4 times, assuming you enjoyed yourself. But they also have the 4th Survivor mode and the Tofu Survivor mode, which we all remember from the original games, and they're still just as hard as they were back in the day. If you want to tie in the DLC and the other stories being released, there's multiple reasons to go through and keep playing this game. Now, there is no online play. This is a single-player game. But still, I gave it a 7, Jim gave it a 6. I think there's plenty of reasons to come back and play. And yes, once you know all the combinations to lockers, you're going to do a lot less of that exploring, but still, if you're trying to unlock those final weapons and some of the other modes, you're going to have to go through it a fair amount of times. When it comes to beer, I'm not going to add any. I like that this took us back to the roots of the original style of unlocking the game in a certain amount of time. So overall, obviously, as we stated during the review, we love the hell out of this game.
Yeah, I mean, our look at Resident Evil games has gone out on a bang. So far, the series in general is on a high note right now between this and 7. So, yeah. I mean, you want to talk about a redemption arc here.
Yeah, they've talked about already, should they do a remake for 3 in this style? I'm sure they'll go down the gamut of games. Or should they continue with a different sequel? Honestly, if they make remakes this quality, I don't give a shit if they remake every old game.
Yeah, I mean, I would rather see a brand new game in this style, but, I mean, 7 was great as it was too, so yeah. Even if they go back and forth or something, like, I want to see the series progress,
yeah.
But even if they do go back with some of the classics, this is the template right here.
Yeah, so, individually, we both gave it a 10, and, we've talked about some of the faults during this review. It's still just a perfect game as far as how we experienced and how much fun we had. I can't stress how much tension I had playing this shit. Like, every enemy felt different than the original, and you never felt like you had enough firepower to deal with them. Like, you always felt like, oh shit, I gotta deal with this now.
Yeah, I never felt this powerless and scared to open a door since my first time playing the original.
Yeah.
Like, this actually took me back to true survival horror.
Yeah, so when we combined all of our scores together, it comes out to an 8.9. Honestly,
so close.
I think it should have been higher, and this is one of the cases where our scores, they're weighted the way they are, because no game's ever going to get a perfect 10 from us. But goddamn if we can't recommend this enough. Whether you're a fan of Resident Evil, the originals, 4, any of them, or you just want to get into survival horror at all, you should go get this game.
It's kind of like what I said with Revelations, how it's like, if you've never been a fan of the series or you never really played the series, to play that, well, this is right up there with that.
Yeah.
Because it's got the perfect balance of, and even more so than Revelations, horror, survival aspect, and just a nearly perfect control scheme.
Yeah, and it's definitely not too action-oriented, because so much of this game is just exploration-based that, I gotta say, they just hit the nail on the head. Even if you love the shit out of the original, there's nice touches like the costumes, going and using the soundtracks. So there's enough there to relive that nostalgia, and it doesn't just try and wipe the slate clean. So once again, we can't recommend this game enough. And until next time, guys, cheers. When it comes to beer pairing, I decided to go with the Goose Island Bourbon County brand stout. This is, without doubt, one of the best American Imperial Stouts aged in bourbon barrels that you are going to taste, and a lot of people think this is the original. That may not be the case, but much like Resident Evil 2, this did a remake to such a classic thing like the American Imperial Stout. Aging it in the bourbon barrels could have been horrendous, but it just works out so well. It's a very smooth drinking beer, and the fact that it comes in at 15.2% means you're going to be on your ass after about one bottle. This is a beer you should not be chugging. You should be appreciating every sip as you play through this amazing video game. But remember to drink your beers and play your games responsibly. As always, guys, thanks for checking out this video, and if you enjoyed it, make sure you give us a thumbs up, leave some comments, or better yet, why not subscribe? Till next time, guys, cheers.